Hey, good morning from the office. I'm your host, BKP. Good Tuesday morning, October 16th, the second day of early voting in Georgia. And some North Georgia counties set records yesterday in early voting. Everyone we talked about 7 counties. Lines 15 minutes long for early voting, and that is pretty big. Some of the early voting places at the counties have 3 and 4 machines, and some of the people told us that the machines, there was somebody at the machine all day long voting at one time or another. Just to let you know, now I know this doesn't sound high, but for Towns County, Georgia, 238 total for Towns. They said that was an enormous. Final for Lumpkin County yesterday, very high, one of the highest. They think it's a record for first day early voting, 439. A record was set in Fannin County, Georgia, 406. It's a record for first day early voting. We will go over that, talk about what some of that may mean in the Georgia race, because rural Georgia will be big in bringing out the votes. You may think, well, 400 here, and you may think that Pickens was 435 yesterday. So early voting is strong in North Georgia counties. Now we're going to have our guest. I'm your host, BKP. Let me get this out of the way so you know. Good morning from the office. If you would like to ever be on the show, that is 706-889-9700, 706-889-9700, or you can email me, chief@fetchernews.com, and don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter at Fetcher News, at FYNTV, and also follow our sports at FYN Sports, Team FYN Sports. Okay, I'm just taken back because we put a new monitor in the studio, and I actually can see everything across the room. Josh will no longer be able to say, yes, that picture is correct, and I just go with it, because I will know now, Josh, won't I? So anyhow, if you'd like to ever be on the show, contact the show, let us know. That's our information. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is FYNTV, Fetcher News YouTube. If you do, then anytime we're doing a live broadcast, you'll get a notification. Now, our first guest this morning is going to be Secretary of State, Republican candidate for governor here in Georgia. Brian Kemp will be with us at 8:05. The misinformation, I want to, as much time as the Secretary has, I'd like to clear up some misinformation for Georgia voters out there. Now, this is a national race. It's been made national by the media, so don't take this wrong. But my information this morning, I want to clear up for Georgia voters. But then if you're out there watching anywhere in the United States, I hope you could take our information and look closely at your elections and what the fake news media is doing in your state. Here, they are running with the 53,000 suppressed votes, voter suppression, lawsuits, national media going crazy over it. Rachel Maddow, The Works, MSNBC, Morning Joe, Minka, you name it, CNN, voter suppression. It's not true. It is not true, because Brian Kemp is Secretary of State, which the Secretary of State oversees elections in the state. The crazies are asking for his resignation. So now let me just say this: we're not going anywhere. When the Secretary calls in, when Brian Kemp calls in, we're just going to check the audio to make sure everything is good on his end and ours, and come back. So we're going to slide our card over, and we'll let you know. But don't go anywhere. It'll only be like 10 seconds before we have Brian Kemp on the line. He's supposed to be with us at 8:05. Okay? Then we're going to have a second guest at 8:30, a Democrat candidate for Georgia State House representative. Okay, he is called in, so we're plugging him up. Don't go anywhere, folks. Okay, folks, we're on the line now. We're joined by Republican candidate for governor of Georgia, Secretary Brian Kemp. Secretary Kemp, how are you this morning?
Hey, good morning. Doing great. Thanks for having me back on.
Well, just first of all, we set some records for first day early voting in several North Georgia counties. So it looks like voting is going to be very strong in this election. Is that the indicators you're getting?
Yes, from everything we're seeing on the campaign side of things, we had a really strong day yesterday. People turning out all over the state to reject the socialist, radical, liberal agenda of Stacey Abrams and her billion-dollar supporters out there in California that she's visited so much during this campaign.
All right, let's get right to this. You got a busy day, one thing after another. The alleged 53,000 voter registration, what they're calling suppression, I'm not sure they are. They leave out the New Georgia Project. They leave that out. They leave out that Stacey Abrams, the media does, leaves out that Stacey Abrams started the New Georgia Project. And a lot of these voter registrations are paper registrations that have to be manually entered, that have a lot of things that are incorrect on them. Am I wrong there, or where are we at on that?
No, you're not wrong. This is a manufactured crisis by them. They're blaming me for a problem that her group created. And look, all these folks have to do on this pending list is go vote. They simply have to do like you and I would, go down to the elections office, show their photo ID, and they can vote. If they want to clear it up before they go to the polling location, they go to the county registrar and clear it up. This is a fake news headline, just like they've done before the presidential election when we elected Donald Trump, and just like they did in 2014 on Governor Deal's re-election campaign. People don't need to buy this. They're being untruthful. They're lying to Georgians. And the New Georgia Project and all of Stacey Abrams' liberal friends actually filed a lawsuit the other day to try to get a liberal judge to let non-citizens vote in our elections. And she said that just a few days ago while campaigning with Elizabeth Warren in Georgia. And it's shocking that you would even want to campaign with Elizabeth Warren in our great state. But it's even more shocking that she said she wanted undocumented people to be able to vote in our elections. That is outrageous. And Georgians need to reject that. And I'm calling on all our folks to do just that during early voting and get out there and cast their ballot for Brian Kemp for governor, someone who's going to put Georgians first ahead of those that are here illegally and folks from California that are trying to influence our elections with their billion-dollar war chest that they have.
Well, what I was hoping to do today, and which we are doing, is clear some of this information up for Georgia voters. If you register, which obviously it's too late now, but if you have registered to vote online, the exact match you would have been able to see online as you were registering if something wasn't correct, your zip code at that time. But isn't it true that Stacey Abrams, as the minority leader in the House, actually opposed online voter registration, more in favor of the paper ballots just for this, is my opinion?
Well, she voted against online voter registration, right, which has helped tremendously make registering to vote easier in this state. That's something that I initiated. It's working. We have 800,000 more people on the rolls now than we did when I took office. We just set a record when we closed out the registration period for this November election, more voters on the rolls than we've ever had. And she's blaming me for a problem that she created. If these individuals had registered online, you don't have these problems with paper applications where people leave information out, don't fill out the form correctly, or you can't legibly read it. You know, this is not me deciding this. This is your county registrar that's looking at these forms and flagging them because they need more information. And they're not being rejected. They're not being held up. But the requirement under the law is you've got to have this information to make sure that you're a citizen of this state and that you register and you're eligible to be able to vote in our elections. And she's voted against the citizenship check. She's voted against online voter registration. She wants to do away with our photo ID law. And she wants non-citizens to vote in our elections. I mean, that is not Georgia values. She's trying to bring California values to the great state of Georgia, and I'm working hard to prevent that.
Let me ask you something. On that video you talked about with Elizabeth Warren the other day when she was here and she was campaigning with Elizabeth Warren, if I heard her correctly, she said documented and undocumented immigrants. Is that correct? Because what caught me off guard is nobody's talking about the words documented. If you're not legally here, it doesn't matter if you have documents. You still can't go vote in our elections.
Exactly. That's what's so outrageous. I mean, it's outrageous to say documented people voting because they're not citizens. That not only is against state laws, it's against the Constitution of the United States and the state of Georgia. But, you know, she wants undocumented folks as well. I mean, it's insane that you would say something. And you know she believes it, by the way. If you've seen the video, if you haven't, you should just go look at it. Because you know she believes it. Her buddies, the New Georgia Project, and all these other liberal groups had filed a lawsuit trying to get a judge to do just that.
All right, the media is actually carrying this water for her. I have a question for you, and I know you've been on several of the networks, but like yesterday morning, I think it was when I watched Sunday morning, she was on with Chuck Todd, and then yesterday morning she was on with Morning Joe. Do you get invited to these shows to give the other side, or are they just running her, carrying her water, and you don't get invited to any of those shows to talk about like what we're talking about now?
No, the liberal media is in the tank for. They've been in the tank for. The New York Times is writing about how great she is every other day. You know, there was I think it was a national, I believe it was Politico or somebody, a national, you know, left-wing news organization actually broke this story. It wasn't even broken in the state of Georgia. And look, even liberal Jay Bookman, you know, an editorial page writer, opinion person with the Atlanta paper, who has never said anything good about me that I know of, was defending us in this, saying that this is not true what she's saying. So this is a campaign tactic to drive her base out to support. But it's gonna work in reverse, because it has infuriated our base the way that the process went with Justice Kavanaugh in Washington. People are fed up with this kind of politics. They want to know what people are going to do for them. That's why I've been here in the state of Georgia instead of on some Washington, New York-based television show on Sunday morning. You know, I was headed to Valdosta last night and then to Thomasville, and I was down checking storm damage in Bainbridge yesterday. And I'm back in Thomasville this morning, headed to Moultrie to talk to a bunch of our farmers about what has happened with this storm. That is what people want in a Georgia governor, not someone who's going on national talk shows building her liberal agenda so she can do whatever, you know, who knows what in the future. This is about our future in Georgia. It's a battle for the soul of our state, and we got to fight for it, because they sure are. We need people to turn out en masse and vote against this and vote for someone who wants to make Georgia #1 for small business, who wants to reform state government so we can lower the state income tax again next year like we did last year, protect fully funding public education, strengthen rural Georgia, and be tough on crime. Go after, you know, drug cartels that have created a distribution hub in our state, as well as go after street gangs. And that's something that she doesn't want to do either.
Well, you know, the Associated Press broke that story. Are you there, sir?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't want. The Associated Press broke that story, and it took off, and all the liberal media picked it up. But is his name Bookman or Booker at the AJC? What is it?
Jay Bookman.
I will admit I had to read that twice.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that shows the whole
when he posted that it wasn't accurate and the 53,000 would be able to vote and it wasn't true, I had to read it twice, knowing him, to make sure that it was correct. When he even comes out and says it. Let me move to one more thing. You did call for the Democrat candidate for Lieutenant Governor Sarah Riggs Amico. You called for her resignation. Can you go in a little detail why you did that, or your campaign?
Well, before we leave my opponent, I will say that a former Obama ICE enforcement director called on Abrams to get out of this race for saying something so outrageous like wanting documented and undocumented people to be part of her blue wave. So, you know, I just wanted to make sure folks knew about that. But I did call on Sarah Riggs Amico to drop out of the race. I mean, there's outrageous sexual harassment complaints by multiple employees of her company. You know, just a few weeks before, she was talking about when I become governor, which I appreciate her endorsement and acknowledgement that I will be the governor. She said I would have a Me Too movement, and then she would become governor. Well, that's outrageous for her to speculate on something like that. My wife, Marty, and my 3 daughters were offended by that. Someone that would say something as outrageous as that is unfit to be lieutenant governor. She should drop out of the race.
Well, you know, when I was in the room and I was listening to her talk, and she was explaining the role of lieutenant governor, and she said, well, you know, you could a governor could be removed from office, and I thought, well, right there's where you put, you know, a period, and then she said, but in the era of the Me Too era, with a Governor Brian Kemp, and that just caught me off guard. I'm like, why do you even bring that up? Why would you say something like that? You know what I'm saying? I thought it
well, let me just tell you this: the women that I know and the people that have been around me my whole life absolutely were disgusted by that comment. The female leaders that I have in the Secretary of State's office, other people that I have worked with for years to make elections secure, accessible, and fair, and to do a better job by servicing and registering corporations in our state, working with many business people and professional licensing and the other things that we would do. They were also offended by that because they have seen me, they know me, and that is an outlandish claim that I completely reject, and she should drop out of the race. If we do not need someone in state government that is that irresponsible to make that kind of comment. And I hope the voters would reject that as well and vote for my good friend Jeff Duncan. He and I are going to work together to increase the rural hospital tax credit to help save our rural hospitals and many other things to make and continue this to be a great state to live, work, and raise your family.
As Secretary of State, they have called for your resignation a couple times themselves, several of these groups, based on not claiming they won't be able to you will not be able to oversee a fair and true election in the state as a candidate. Can you guarantee the citizens that you can continue your role as Secretary of State of Georgia, oversee the elections, and that Georgians are going to have an accurate and fair election?
Well, absolutely I can. And this shows again how ridiculous that they are, because they don't even realize that it's the county elections officials, your county election superintendent, that actually goes through and carries out the elections process as the local elections board that certifies the election results, the official results, before they're even given to the Secretary of State's office for final certification. That's done at the local level, and then they're hand delivered to our office by our post-certified investigators. So anybody that knows the process, which they surely don't, or if they do, they're just lying to the people of Georgia, know that we're going to have a great election, just like we did in this state when we had record turnout when we elected Donald Trump as president, and like we've had over the last 2 years in the other municipal elections, and what we're fixing to have this November. I can promise you we will have a secure, accessible, and fair elections. And if anybody's having problems, all they got to do is report it to their county or to our office, and we'll investigate as we do on every claim that we get.
Last question, because I know you have to go. I know the president was in Georgia yesterday surveying the Hurricane Michael damage, and he was focused on that at his time here. Have you had a chance to talk to the President Trump at any time as he called you, or you had any conversation with him? And do you expect him to visit Georgia in a campaign role before the election?
Well, I'm not sure about, him coming back to Georgia. Certainly hope he does. I've talked to the vice president last week about the storm situation, and I know the president's been in touch with Secretary Perdue, Agriculture Commissioner Gary Black. Governor Deal was speaking the other night at an event with me and was talking about how many cabinet level folks are undersecretaries, as well as the president himself, that he had talked to prior to the storm, pledging their support, their help to be there with us on the response. We're seeing that on the ground, as I mentioned earlier, and I'm just very proud of the response we've had from the federal level, the state level, and from our local communities to help those brothers and sisters in need. It's been really overwhelming to see that on the ground, and you know, that's what you do in Georgia. It makes me proud to be a Georgian, and we're working hard to help in that regard as well.
So the areas that are most effective, we can make sure that voting machines, everything's set up and good to go for those people in those areas. Nothing.
Yep, I spent all day Saturday meeting with elections officials in those counties. They're either ready to go or we're in the process of it. I was on the ground again yesterday in Thomasville and Bainbridge, and we got a couple of counties that were really hard hit that's struggling a little bit, but they're working on being ready, and the other counties are already in the process of early voting. I feel very confident about that. We're going to have a great election, and those people have gone above and beyond the duty to give citizens their right to vote, and I would urge people to go out and exercise that and vote for Brian Kemp, a person that will put them first ahead of the special interest in those billionaire socialists from California that are supporting my opponent's campaign.
Billionaire socialists from California, I understand, Mr. Secretary. We've been keeping an eye on them up here in North Georgia, okay, if that's any consolation. Thank you for being on. Thank you for always coming on and talking to our viewers here in North Georgia. We wish you well on the campaign trail. Any last comments to the voters up here in our area?
Anybody that wants to volunteer and help us get the vote out, please do so. You can also sign up at kempforgovernor.com or send us a small contribution to help offset and say no to those money folks out in California, New York, Martha's Vineyard, anywhere else around the country that is trying to help buy this election for my opponent. I'd appreciate it. God bless.
Thank you, Secretary Kemp. You have a good day campaigning. We wish you well.
Same here. Thanks, guys.
Okay, that has been Secretary Brian Kemp. He's the Republican candidate for the governor of Georgia. Let me make a couple comments before on our conversation with Secretary Kemp this morning. Is the Jay Bookman, okay, I think that's his name, probably one of the most liberal columnists. And if you're out there nationwide, anywhere nationally watching this morning and you're not in Georgia, Jay Bookman is probably one of the most liberal columnists at the AJC I have ever read. You have to read his columns just, you know, to get angry and worked up from time to time. If you want to get the old blood pumping, you read Jay Bookman's articles in the AJC. And even he, that's what the Secretary was commenting. I had to read the post twice when he put it out. Even he said, the 53,000 will be able to vote. This is, you know, not a quote, but this is a lie. It's not true. But the media ran with it. They ran with it. They think they have something. Rachel Maddow ran with it. Stopping voting, voter suppression. This has been a big Democrat manufactured lie. Absolute big lie. Okay, and we've exposed that here and we've talked about it. The exact match. Let me clear up the exact match. If you go online, and this, I want to do this for the exactly if you're out there nationally, because I do know we have some viewers across the country. So anywhere you're at, what Georgia has, if you're reading the exact match law, means if you go online and you go to Secretary of State, you can register to vote online. All right? And when you do vote, register to vote, anything that's inaccurate, you will know immediately, right while you're doing it. You will know if your zip code's not correct. You will know if you're missing a middle initial because that's what you have on your voter, on your driver's license, whatever, your address. If something is incorrect, you will know then, right while you're doing it, and you can get it cleaned up right then and get your voters' registrations done, period. Only if you're not legal or trying to fraudulently register, you know, do you get kicked out? So that works, all right? Number two, Stacey Abrams is the minority leader in the Georgia House of Representatives for the Democrats, minority. She has opposed, okay, online registration because she wants the paper registration. Because she started what's called, Stacey Abrams started what's called the New Georgia Project. The New Georgia Project was determined, and let me get this for you, okay? The New Georgia Project, Stacey Abrams' $10 million plan to double down on voter registration. Out of Georgia's roughly 1.5 million unregistered voting age residents, as many as 900,000 are minorities. Democrats have long wanted to register more people of color in their quest to flip the state from red to blue. In her recent years, no one's done more to lead the charge than Georgia House Minority Leader Stacey Abrams. So she started the New Georgia Project. And what they did is they went and paid people to canvass, okay? And you got so much for a voter registration. Well, these people at Canvas went through these, started going through these minority areas in the state of Georgia and just signing up anybody and everyone. Doesn't matter. Didn't matter if it was accurate, didn't matter if they knew their address, didn't matter if they knew any of their information, signing them up because they were interested in getting paid. Okay? What the national media will not tell you is many of these canvassers, as many as maybe 17, I think, or maybe somewhere in that area, 11, 17, somewhere in that area, are under investigation by the state attorney general's office. Okay? So they didn't care how many were wrong. They just wanted the money when they turned them in. So now when you turn these handwritten voter registration forms in, they have to be entered manually and they have to be validated, and so much is left off these voter registration forms and they get kicked to the side for more information or accurate information. They try to send the people a message. They try to call the phone, maybe. But every bit of this is a lie. There's no voter suppression in the state of Georgia. But they carried it, right? MSNBC did not invite Brian Kemp on to refute what Stacey Abrams was saying. Morning Joe, when they had Stacey Abrams on, they didn't have Brian Kemp to refute. Now up Brian Kemp. It's just like, I would have Stacey Abrams on right now to refute Brian Kemp, but they won't even return my phone calls. But MSNBC didn't. Chuck Todd on Sunday morning. Rachel Matt, none of them do. Okay, now they filed lawsuits. They filed these lawsuits. Just saying. I'm your host, BKP. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have in studio with us, we're going to switch over to a state house race, Georgia State House District 11. And the opponent is a Democrat, and his name is Lee Shiver, and first-time candidate running for office. And we're going to have him in here for about 20 minutes and let him tell you why he would like to be the representative in the 11th State House, 11th District in Georgia. Take us to break, Josh.